Hello, everyone, and welcome to SPE Live. I'm your host, David Gibson, and for this SPE Tech Talk, we are bringing in Schlumberger to be able to talk about advanced digital performance with drilling fluids. Again, advanced digital performance with drilling fluids. It's going to be a very exciting conversation. So this is the exact moment that we need you guys here to be able to interact with us. Please. This is live. This is the whole reason why we're doing it live. We want you all out there watching to be able to tell us what you're thinking. Let us know where you're watching from. We'll give you guys a shout out here on the show, right? Be able to ask questions to the expert. Obviously not me, the person that'll be coming on here in just a second. All right. We also have one more thing to be able to do. We want to see what y'all think about the current state of the industry within some of these things. So for today's Tech Talk, we have 3 poll questions in the LinkedIn event. You can find those by scrolling down on the LinkedIn event page. So linkedin.com, scroll down, boop, 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 there it is, right? Question number 1, how often have you analyzed integrated real-time fluids data with downhole hydraulics software to calculate RCD, hole cleaning, or etc., right? Next question number 2, do you see a large knowledge or experience variation between drilling fluid specialists? Right? Don't throw anybody under the bus, but yes or no there. All right. Not quite a yes or no, but there's 4 options there. All right. And finally, question number 3, when you think of digital and automated drilling fluid advisor, what comes to mind first? Or what first comes to mind? All right. Reading things backwards this morning. All right, those are the poll questions. They are on the LinkedIn event page, so you may need to scroll down to be able to go to the bottom and be able to vote on those, but please do vote. We want that interaction to be here with you guys. This is the whole reason why we're doing this live, so that we can have that interaction. So please, once again, let us know where you guys are watching from. All right, let's get to it. In our drilling fluids discussion today, Schlumberger will share information on their advanced software platform that brings together the rig site and optimizes processes and roles. Right. Joining me for this Tech Talk is Ethan Peterson. He is a drilling fluid digital product champion. He is the champion at Schlumberger. Welcome to this SPE Tech Talk, and thank you for joining us.
Hello. Thank you for having me. I appreciate you giving me the time to come on and just kind of review what we have for the Drilling Fluid Advisor and go over what some of our anticipation is for the upcoming digital evolution here in the oil industry.
Excellent. Well, Ethan, while the audience is voting on the post, so please, y'all out there, do your civic duty and vote. All right. The first poll actually sets up this conversation nicely. We are asking how often people are using real-time fluids data. Historically, what have you noticed that response to be?
As far as using real-time drilling fluids data, it's really depends on what type of well we're being used. But what we've seen in general is that people are using data more and more, and really realizing the benefits that you can get out of even looking at just what used to be considered standard data and trends. You can now extrapolate that into a lot more value from these wells than you ever anticipated, especially if you start increasing the frequency and reliability of that data that's coming through.
So why do you think that's the case, that people have started to use more digital data?
That's a great question. I think the accessibility to it, I think the platforms being able to have it and manipulate it, put it into different formats has really started to increase the ease that we can have with this data, having all of it available in a digital format, whether it's WITSML communication off of the rig site, even 20 years ago when people started playing around with just data coming and into Excel sheets, analyzing it, comparing what used to be different measurements versus downhole or rig performance data. And it's really the benefits that we've started to see from being able to make these comparisons are increasing day by day. What may not have seemed to correlate in the past, now we can start seeing some correlations and trends, and even start using some algorithms to start looking deeper into those.
So with that, what needs to change for the industry to have more understanding and to adopt better practices in the digital performance? Because obviously, as this is growing up, it didn't grow up as a perfect child, right? There have been some bumps in the road. So what do we need to do to be better going forward?
You know, the best things that we have seen is, as I had already mentioned, the ease of use, being able to have the data automatically being captured and automatically being stored in the right places at the right time and increased frequency has greatly increased the ability to do this. So as opposed to before, sometimes before we used to have data crunchers, people whose whole jobs were to accumulate all of this data, try and put it together in a way that makes sense. If something wasn't right, if drilling measurement was an offshoot, people would have to manually clean these up. And now with the digital age, we're able to take all of this data, start bringing it into one single place automatically off of the rig site through secure methods, and being able to have that be processed and cleaned up, I guess you could say, in a way that this data is now available. It's all stored. You know exactly where to seek it, where to bring different parts together. You can bring those parts together. You can, like drilling data, you can go ahead and bring that in with like ROPs, things like that. Compare those to maybe your solids content. How much low gravity did you have during the well? What was your ROP? How did that influence this? Being able to have that at your fingertips at all times, and even be looking at it live, has greatly increased the ability to react and see immediate benefit off of the data that's coming in.
Everybody loves the real-time data. All right, so audience, we do have the poll questions out there, so please be sure to continue answering. We won't check just yet to see how everybody's answered. We'll wait till a little bit later on, give you all some more time to be able to answer those questions. Poll 3 is interesting because it is asking about what people expect from a drilling fluid advisor, and you have a software platform called just that, DFA, Drilling Fluid Advisor. From what I understand, it has data aggregation and analysis, tracks fluid health and performance downhole. How is DFA changing how we manage drilling fluids?
You know, drilling fluids traditionally, depending on where you were, we have some of the high tier. We also have somewhat factory drilling situations. So depending on what kind of a situation you're looking at, we really have a little bit of a situation where all of this information that's being processed, that's being analyzed, is really kind of coming together now. So what I mean by that is we've had all of these measurements being done by a person at the well site, and that's it. It really depends on what the skill level is of that person. If it's a high tier situation, they have 12-hour towers. They might even have up to 4 drilling fluids engineers on a project. Sometimes they have 1. Sometimes on some land rigs they have a drive-by. And so the varying degree that you see from the measurements that are being taken greatly differentiate depending on what kind of an activity you have. And then even from there, there's a lot of calculations. There's API standards as to how they interpret those measurements of their drilling fluid, and versus the planned data, it can vary greatly depending on the drilling fluid specialist or mud engineer who is trying to measure, measure and gauge what to do next. What are the recommendations that are going to be used to best meet the customer's demands for that well? Do we want to go really cheap on this one and just, it's factory drilling. We already know what we need to add. Let's go ahead and add pretty much the same thing that we added last well, or maybe it's an exploratory well where we're really needing to knuckle down and find a new way to do things and make sure that we're looking for reactive formations. And so there's a lot of interpretation and manual measurements that are going on during these situations that can vary a lot between drilling fluid specialists. So they have so much to focus on as far as a mud engineer, drilling fluid specialist, that it becomes quite a task to manage all of these things at once. And so as we start looking now at digital and automation, it really opens up the scope there to say, what can we take off their plate? What can we start standardizing? What can we start doing to help them out, to ease their job, and to make sure that we have the highest quality drilling fluid at all times on every project to meet that client demand.
So it's very interesting. So you're saying there about, having some of these, be manned operations versus, drive-by operations. So as more things are becoming remote operations and not all drilling environments are easy to access, especially for pulling data, what type of opportunities are out there for remote operations?
That's a great question. So there are some areas, particularly offshore, where we are running drilling fluids remotely during certain intervals. And this is done by two different methods. Of course, we have manual measurements that traditionally needed to be run. Now we start having automated equipment like our Reel Profiler, for instance, 200, 300 inline laboratory version where anyone can really feed these. There's not a lot of technical requirements that are needed to get these automated measurements. And so now that we have that option, we can start reaching out to different sources. And once that data is automatically transferred back to town, we can have a remote operations center where we can have drilling fluid specialists collaborating with remote drilling engineers, or even as we start getting into it, cementers, remote cementers, and really start getting into the realm of having these remote operations centers where everyone is collaborating and everyone is really working together. And with the delivery of all of this data to town, we can really start providing some of the same recommendations that we would typically be able to provide from that drilling fluid specialist at the well site. Especially when we start, like I said, when we can multi-skill, use CCTV and some of these other methods that we now have with technology today, it really opens up and allows for eyes to be at the well site from anywhere around the world.
Oh, with this technology, what was really the genesis of this engineering feat? Like, why did y'all start to tackle this problem?
That's a great question. I think really when we started to delve into this, a lot of it was client demand. We had already started dabbling into the concept of running these remote operation centers. Obviously, we've seen directional and measurements be able to run remotely, and we took a look at what a drilling fluid specialist can do at the well site. And although, like I had said, for drive-by and 24-hour service, we really have that drilling fluid specialist taking care of quite a bit. However, on some of these other jobs where you will always have a 12-hour tower, or maybe anywhere from 2 to 4 drilling fluid specialists on location at a time, we started taking a look at, well, can we make calls? Can we make decisions from offshore? And really with the onset of COVID and working from home, this not only became something where we could start reducing the cost at the well site by moving someone to town, and even expanding the expertise of the people that we're getting by moving it to town with our best drilling fluid specialist. But it's become a requirement for HSE in order to keep people off of the well site, keep people from having to travel back and forth to avoid the spread of COVID-19.
Obviously, COVID-19 has been, the chief technology officer for many companies and pushing us forward into the future. But in doing these remote operations, did y'all see any pushback, whether it's from, potentially from somebody within the client, even though you said that they were the ones, kind of leading the way, asking for this, but at the same time, maybe somebody in the field or other service companies that are interacting? And how did y'all overcome some of those challenges?
Yes, there's definitely challenges, and that's where we start running into concepts of whenever there's change like this, everyone would like to just say, I have my list of everything that this person has done at the well site. And so when you start reaching out with new technologies like this, you're of course never going to be able to meet the same demands. Like I had mentioned, if you have a drive-by person, that person will not be able to do the same things that he would normally be able to do in person. But that's when you can start bringing more value. So can you have more analysis on that drive-by job with people on a 24-hour basis? Now you're monitoring it constantly and having people take a look at it for the same cost that you would get off of someone is showing up at the well site maybe for 4 hours or less, depending on how many rigs he needs to hit that day. So another part of this, like I had mentioned with these remote operations centers, is yes, there's a lot of things at the well site that people may have to pick up on, that may have to spread the communication for. If there isn't a CCTV over the shakers, what do the cuttings look like? What are the cuttings loads? I just need to know that information if I'm going to make the right decision. So these are some of the things that we're still working towards. That maybe there's some pushback from the people we have to partner with in order to get this information. But altogether, when we bring it into the remote operations center and we have the best experts who have drilled in that area, who know some of these places like the back of their hands, and also with the ability for them to collaborate with drilling and measurements, it really starts opening up the realms of bringing more value. Can we be running more hydraulics scenarios? Can we even run a live hydraulic scenario now with this performance, this live remote operations that we never had been able to before? And we can start seeing this greater value coming from algorithms and the data correlation and processing and health monitoring that we just didn't really have before, where maybe someone would question, should I be doing this move? Should I not be doing this move? Now we have some backup for them, some definites of, yes, this is heading in the right direction, you're good to go, or maybe things aren't looking so good, you might want to send a sweep of something, do something else. And so we've been seeing, yes, some pushback, but altogether, we're bringing more value and more benefits from this.
Excellent. And so one of the great things that I've seen with having individuals watching over something remotely, especially when they get to work with their counterparts from different essentially professions. You've got the directional driller working alongside the geosteer. Are y'all having some of those same eureka moments where you had mentioned that the mud advisor is being, or the drilling fluids advisor is being able to work alongside some of the other drilling people? Have y'all had some of those eureka moments where it's like, oh, we accomplished something that we wouldn't have been able to accomplish had we not all been in the same room kind of looking over things together?
Oh yes, absolutely. There's been quite a bit of those coming from some of our remote operations centers. I know, for instance, Mexico, some of our other operations centers that we have, where we have this whole collaboration with the clients, with the drillers, and everyone. They're able to simply turn around and say, "This doesn't look right. Is there a reason? What are we doing? Are we? Is there a build we need to do? Is there something we need to do?" And yes, you can have that communication at the well site, but being able to just immediately turn around and ask if something is working right or not right. Do we need to run a scenario to see if this is the best option? It just happens that much quicker than originally, with everyone at the well site collaborating together like that. If you have some of these experts in a command center at the well site, you can get some of those benefits. But definitely we've seen that ability to have our best experts in that area be able to run a scenario on multiple wells at once and focus on those as opposed to just our representative at the well site.
It's awesome to be able to hear this because, then if they're going through so many more issues that much quicker, that their level of expertise grows with it. Are you seeing that with your team as well?
Yes, actually, we've seen that quite a bit. It seems like the people that are stationed at these remote operations center, of course, nothing's going to beat on-site experience. However, the amount of problems and coaching that's involved in some of these remote operations really enhances our ability to focus on things and learn and increase our knowledge base from some of our newer drilling fluid specialists or subject matter experts. And then, of course, now with the drilling fluid advisor being able to not only do that, but really let even the experts know some of these calculations, some of this data coming through, we've calculated it through, looks like it's this is out of spec, that's out of spec, you might want to take a look at this. It really enhances the ability of even experts to look at everything at once, because we're human. Sometimes things slip through, sometimes you don't notice something, and this really kind of fixes that. It allows you to be laser focused on a particular task, because you're going to be warned if something starts to head a little bit out of specification or whatever that well needs.
So you mentioned it there as far as having new drilling fluid specialists coming in through the program, and so with this software, is that helping to be able to bridge that gap between having people who are high-level experts because of what we just talked about, because they're getting the repetition and they're learning so much faster. And I know with a lot of other remote operation centers is that not having that not having people do 10 years in the field, and then you want them to do 10 years in the field, but now they don't need to do 10 years in the field. They could just do the time in the office, but they still have to have a baseline to be able to get into the remote center. Is the software helping to bridge that gap with new individuals that are coming up?
Absolutely. I think so, because it really gets them involved as well in some of the planning and the analysis on what specifications are being pushed for that well. And it can open up concepts of, why do we have this YP on this project? Is this the right YP that we need to hold? Is this the right gel strength that we need to be having on this project? What do our low gravity solids look like? And so it also raises some questions for them if something is out of spec, out of specification, and they're getting a warning from it, to go a little bit further and say, okay, well, what does the drilling look like? And if the drilling seems to be okay and everything seems to be going smoothly, it might definitely raise some questions with some of these newer people of, okay, well, do we need to change our parameters? Do we need to change our plan for the next well so that we can best optimize this project? Can we make a change to the plan right now to best optimize the project, lower our drilling fluids additive cost, and increase ROP, lower the amount of sweeps that we have? And so absolutely, it helps everyone involved really start raising questions on an hourly basis as to, are we drilling this well? Are we drilling this well correctly?
Sorry.
Oh, I'm sorry.
That's all right. All right, guys. So now we'll fire off. We'll do kind of like a lightning round style here with the questions or the polls. I'll read off the question, and then Ethan, you give me your response to this. So question number 1 was, how often have you analyzed integrated real-time fluids data with downhole hydraulic software to calculate RCD, hole cleaning, etc.? And so we've got never at 40%, occasionally at 20%, and difficult wells at 40%. Ethan, your thoughts?
No, that's great. I think that's a really interesting poll. It definitely is in line with what we've seen in the past as well. And what's interesting about this is that when you start to get measurements, even on some of your easy wells that you may not think matter, you can start mapping an entire area as to what the behaviors are. I mean, sometimes you're going to drill in an area and you're just never going to run into problems, but it just takes one of those problem wells, one well that you hit that just doesn't go well, and it really affects how things. It can affect an entire drilling program. You can be good for the year as far as your budget, hit one disaster well, and now all of a sudden you're looking at changing or stopping early for the year. So it can have a huge effect on your entire drilling program to just have one problematic well. And so seeing that poll, it's really in line with what we had already suspected. But with digital, with all of this data coming together in an automated way and being able to have calculations being done automatically, you can start mapping your entire area. Maybe there's a trend in one part of your area. Maybe it slopes down. Things that you may have already suspected through talking to your geologists. But you could definitely start noticing maybe a problematic formation. Maybe your drilling fluid's behaving differently. For some reason, you're drilling slower, and the geologist just isn't totally sure why. We can really start looking at the details there. Now that all this data is coming in automatically, able to analyze your ECDs, and you can determine, all right, we see this trend at this depth in the southeastern area of this particular basin almost every time. So let's go ahead and prepare for that. We can clean up a little bit more and increase our ROP by or drilling performance significantly in that area. So no, absolutely, it's an interesting poll, and that's what we've seen traditionally. But going forward, it's going to be interesting with digital, because being able to map entire areas is going to open up quite a bit once you're analyzing all that data.
I like that, because I always like to think, well, you don't know it's a difficult well until it's a difficult well, right? So it's not,
right.
Yeah, maybe you're going to have some technical challenges coming up, but then we've all been on that, the well from hell or whatever. But it's like we didn't know it was going to be difficult till we were actually already there. So this is good to be able to be thinking about things ahead of time and mapping everything out. All right, so we got one last question for you, and then your closing thoughts. Does this mean everybody can stop blaming the mud engineer? And then just what are your closing thoughts for today?
Really what we're looking at with this is we're a drilling fluids company. I started off as a mud engineer, and we still have a lot of drilling fluid specialists out there. We are absolutely looking to help support their roles. As far as blaming the mud engineer, that's one of the goals, is to make sure that there's a little bit more data. There's a consistent data to back up what we're doing, what activities we're doing, and get a lot more accuracy with some of the decisions, precision, making sure that globally per area, there's some logic that goes beyond experience. Of course, experience, very difficult to beat as far as a drilling fluid specialist. However, when we're able to back up when they aren't completely sure, and we're able to back it up with data, calculations, offset well data, algorithms, it's going to greatly increase the ability for your job to be consistent, no matter who you have out there, no matter what type of specialist you have at your well site.
Well, Ethan, thank you so much for being a part of today's show. And for everybody out there watching, if you do want to get in touch with the Ethan, either hit up their website, or Ethan, should they hit you up on LinkedIn? Is that a good place? Uh-oh. I think he froze there for a second. All right. Anyways, guys, thank you guys so much for watching. We do appreciate it. Please stay tuned for more SPE Lives, more SPE Tech Talks. We're always trying to bring y'all the best content we possibly can. We're going to continue to have experts come on here, and we love it when you ask us questions, give us your comments, and even vote in the polls doing your civic duty. We appreciate it so much. Ethan, thanks so much for being here today and educating us on drilling fluids performance. All right. Until next time, as I always say, everybody, know your industry.
Thanks.